Uh, Kevin Owocki, CEO, founder of Gitcoin. How are you doing?
I'm good, Jeff. Thanks so much for having me. Happy to be at Ethereal Summit. This is my third or fourth Ethereal Summit, I think.
And the first virtual one?
I think it may actually be the second virtual one.
Oh,
Wait,
okay.
has the pandemic been that long?
Yeah.
I do miss coming out to New York and hanging out with everyone. It's been a lot of fun to be there in person. And hopefully in 2022 we'll be able to do that.
Yeah, I'm hoping so as well. Real easy way to get started. Can you explain to a layperson what Gitcoin is and why it's important?
Sure. So Gitcoin is a place that you can get coins if you are a software engineer. It is our mission to economically empower open source software developers and help them get paid for working on open source software. Open source software is one of the fastest growing job categories in the United States and in the world, and it's a path to middle class life for lots of people, and we make that accessible via getting paid with cryptocurrency. So I'd like to think that we're at the start of an internet of jobs in which people will get paid. They will get coins in exchange for their skills.
And you guys have a couple of different initiatives that you use. And I think the one that people are probably most familiar with is Gitcoin grants. And how does that relate to the workshops or other initiatives you have?
Sure. Gitcoin Grants is one of the largest crowdfunding platforms in the Ethereum community. It's basically if someone is already doing great work in open source software, then we run these matching campaigns every quarter where you can contribute to their work and they can get coins in exchange for the great work they're already doing in the community. And so that's what we're, I guess, most famous for. But we do run hackathons, virtual hackathons. And the basic idea there is that if you're looking to break into the cryptocurrency ecosystem, you're looking to earn, learn, and connect with other software developers, then a virtual hackathon is a great way to participate and build the open web and build your skills and earn some coins while you're doing it. So hackathons are kind of complementary to Gitcoin grants insofar as grants are kind of like, I'm already doing X and I want to raise Y coins for it. Whereas hackathons are like, sponsors will be like, I want you to do X and I'll give you Y coins for it. So it's just a matter of who defines the scope of work, and they're complementary because of that.
So you guys pretty dependent upon sponsors within the ecosystem for funding. How do you get that money to the developers?
Sure. Well, so basically, everyone in the space is looking for software developers right now. And so our goal with Gitcoin is just to be a community of software developers that supports each other and shares opportunities with each other. And, it's never a problem to find sponsors when there's, what is there, $2 trillion worth of market cap right now, and they're all chasing too few developers. Like, I think developers are scarcer than Bitcoin and probably more valuable, if you ask me. And so, the developers are our friends in our community, but they're also the scarcest resource in the Ethereum space. And so it's actually pretty easy once you've identified a developer that's a fit for your project and that you're working with them to get them paid because of the blockchain. Like, we don't have to run any complicated payroll services. We just send them a transaction with some ETH or some tokens. Well, we don't send it, our sponsors do. We never actually touch the money, and that's how they get coins on Gitcoin.
So having said that, what are some areas that you think are kind of constantly underfunded, and how has Gitcoin maybe helped readjust that and get money where it needs to be flowing?
Sure. Yeah, so open source software is this thing called a public good. And public goods are like, contrast it with something that you could buy on Amazon where you pay like $30 for, I don't know, a light so that you can do an interview with someone like you. Open source software is something that's called non-excludable and non-rivalrous. So like, if Jeff, you wanted to download an open source software repository, that wouldn't exclude me from downloading it. And there's no rivalry in consumption of open source because everyone can just clone the software. And so this is really great because it means that open source software can create $500 billion worth of economic value every year. But it's also really bad for the maintainers because it's a public good and they don't have a business model to charge for it. And what I really, really think is depressing about software and Web 2 is that you have these people who have distribution of their open source repositories to millions, sometimes tens of millions of people, and they have to go work for like Chase Bank in order to pay their mortgage in their family. And it's just totally unfair that someone that's providing that much value can't capture enough of it to pay their mortgage. And the cool thing about open source software is just how much value it creates for the world. And it's our mission to support these people so that they can work on open source and get paid for it. And so basically what we've been doing is we've got Gitcoin Grants, which is a crowdfunding platform for the open source software that you already work on. And we run these matching campaigns, which basically every quarter we have about $500,000 that we'll deploy to open source software contemporaneously with the community. And what's really neat about the way that we do the matching is that we use this thing called quadratic funding, which can really multiply your contribution to open source software. And that gets you over what's called the free rider problem in public goods. The free rider problem in public goods is basically stated as like, why would I contribute to this open source software repository when I'm already getting it for free? Well, with Gitcoin Grants and quadratic funding, you can contribute $1 to your favorite projects, and that can sometimes be matched with up to $100, sometimes even $300. And so it gets you over the free rider problem of like, why should I bother to take out my wallet to support these people? And that's kind of the secret sauce of Gitcoin. Well, it's not actually secret sauce. It's Vitalik's idea. We're just like the people who put a neon interface on it and are implementing it for everyone.
Right. And I think you guys are on, what is it, your 10th round of grants so far?
Yeah. Yeah. We've done 10 of them so far. Yeah.
And having done that, what do you look at and say, wow, I didn't think people were so interested in X, or I really thought people would go for Z?
Yeah. I gotta say that the growth has been pretty astounding. We started Gitcoin Grants round 1 in January 2019, like the heart of the bear market, and deployed $43,000 to open source software. And the most recent round, Gitcoin Grants round 9, just deployed $1.85 million to open source software. So they've been growing at about 20 or 30% every single round. And what's cool is that we're building up this preference map of who in the community cares about what projects. And it's really cool to look at the data and see, oh, this cluster of users cares a lot about data science and building a token engineering commons. This group of projects cares a lot about making sure that journalism is well funded in the Ethereum space. And so there's no one answer, but what I think is really important is that the everyday lay people in the space can contribute to the public goods that they really care about and actually have an impact on funding them. And one of my favorite things to do is to, during the round, if you go to gitcoin.co/grants and you click on explore grants, we have this view that we built called up and coming grants on it, which is a really great way to find out about projects that you've never heard of. And it's just a side effect of these crowdfunding rounds that you can see what has legitimacy with everyday members of the community. And so identifying the next Uniswap and Yearn Finance and 1inch Exchange, all of those are Gitcoin Grants alumni from 2019. Like, I really want to help propel the next great DApps into being mainstream and hopefully provide a filtering mechanism for the Ethereum space to help those people be successful.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because you're kind of at this interesting point where you can kind of see what's come before, but part of development is thinking about what's coming next. So what do we've had DeFi summer, NFTs are happening now. It looks like maybe DAOs are picking up steam. So what sort of areas, what direction do you think the Ethereum ecosystem is going?
Yeah, I think it's going in all directions. It's the beauty of decentralization, but it also makes it hard to follow all the progress. Yeah, I mean, I can give you my opinion, but I would just say that the magic of quadratic funding is that it's not about me. I'm just creating a credibly neutral platform where the community can express its interests and values. What I think is really interesting and what I hope to see is more things around digital identity. And I just think that digital identity is just a really important thing in our everyday financial lives. You get into an Uber driver's car, you just want to know that you're going to be safe and that they're not a creep. you're going to invest in someone's company, you want to know what their track record is and whether they've had exits in the past and whether or not they've ever been accused of like fraud or something like that. And so identity is just such a part of our financial lives. And I can't wait to see digital identity solutions go live in the blockchain space, because it's going to allow us to go from just speculating on these tokens to actually transacting with Ethereum and Ethereum technology in our everyday lives. If you think about the everyday citizen of the world, 95% of them, their financial lives is their jobs and their community transactions, not their investments. And so I think if we're going to make the jump from early adopters into late majority and mainstream, digital identity is just so important for us to nail. And so that's where I'm spending a lot of my headspace right now.
Do you have a sense of how that looks? Because digital identity is one of those things that I can't really wrap my head around what changes. Like how does that actually work?
Yeah.
You know, is it a sci-fi concept or is it just a practical way of people kind of getting around the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing that you'll see is that instead of like all these no token systems will go live with airdrops. And one of the real big questions right now is like, how do you get a good distribution amongst the community of your token via an airdrop? And if you have a digital identity solution, you can say, oh, I want to give it to everyone who's created a balancer pool or everyone who's contributed to Gitcoin grants. And, you know, that's like a very obvious example of using decentralized identity. Like, I think this could be really useful for under collateralized loans, for example. Like, instead of having to over collateralize your maker loan, you can look at someone's digital identity and say, oh, they've paid back all their loans in the past, so we can use their identity as collateral. But, you know, one of the cool things about technology is that the first use cases of a technology are going to be skeuomorphic, which just basically means that they map to something in the real world. And you know, once the technology advances enough, then we're going to go over this horizon where you couldn't have predicted what's going to exist in the future. And the example that I like to always use is like, because with the benefit of hindsight, we can look at the difference between Yahoo and Google, who both have the mission of organizing the world's information. And Yahoo just took the library card catalog system and put it on the internet, whereas Google invented a non-skeuomorphic interface, a search interface that was native to the new environment and never could have existed without digital technology. And I just like, they created so much value by doing that. So I'm really interested in digital identity, what the non-skeuomorphic use cases are going to be once once this stuff gets enough traction and adoption. How are people going to leverage identity data in a way that's never been possible before? And that's what I'm here for. You know, that sci-fi future stuff. I can't wait to see what gets invented there.
So Gitcoin recently spun out of Consensus. So that's a big move. So what's exciting about that for you? What sort of things does it allow Gitcoin to do? I know I think decentralization is kind of something that's really important to you. So where is it scary and where is it fun?
For sure, yeah. I'm super thankful to back in 2017 when I launched Gitcoin. It was just me and some of my friends from Colorado using it, and I'm just super thankful to Joe back in 2017 for making a bet on me and the Gitcoin team. And we went from just like some Colorado hippies using it to like MetaMask and Truffle and the Ethereum Foundation using Gitcoin because of Joe's investment and network. So thank you to Consensus and Joe for helping us get to where we are. But yeah, it is, we're trying to see if this bird can fly right now. And that means running our own accounting, having our own lawyers and stuff like that. And I'm a software engineer, if you couldn't tell by my long hair and my general software engineerness. And so learning to run our own accounting and bookkeeping, all that kind of stuff has been a lot of wood to chop. But I think that there's a lot of upside now to being independent and to being able to make decisions with a little bit more autonomy. Software engineering is just such a huge part of the world's economy, and if we can do more good by being independent and autonomous, then I think that there's a lot of upside for the Ethereum space and for software engineers across the world. So I just hope we don't screw it up. And thank you to Joe and Consensus for believing in us from the start.
So having looked into Gitcoin and talking with you guys in the past, you're looking at making it so that Gitcoin, which is kind of now kind of a pillar of Ethereum, of the ecosystem, is independent, but also more decentralized, correct?
Mm.
So what
Yep.
sort of mechanisms are you looking at employing to make that happen?
Yeah, for sure. In 2017, when we launched Gitcoin, we made a choice not to launch a token and not to focus on decentralization. We just wanted to build a platform and a brand that had an important mission that people could use today and that they would love. And so the last several quarters, we've seen 30 to 50% growth in Gitcoin's number of developers and gross marketplace value, which is just basically like the number of basically how much money goes through the platform. A year ago, it was like $1 million per quarter. Now it's like $7 million per quarter is going through the platform. And how many lives can we touch in so far as like people can pay their mortgage because they're working on open source with Gitcoin is like the metric that I'm optimizing for. But now that we've actually got an economy going with Gitcoin, one of the questions is, well, do we just want to become like another Upwork? Like, do we want to become like a gig economy startup? I don't think that that's where we want to go. And so, how do we make Gitcoin governed by the community is kind of a really big question that we see coming up. And what I really want is for Gitcoin to be governed by the community that it serves, because that's how you create a positive feedback loop where you're doing more and more good. And I really think that one of the faults of the gig economy is that I just feel like it extracts so much from workers. And so, we're still kind of like, to be honest, the honest answer is that we're still kind of figuring out exactly what that looks like. But my thinking right now is that the final form of Gitcoin looks more like a DAO and less like an Upwork. And I hope that people hold me to that, because if not, we would not be serving our purpose of growing and sustaining open source and empowering software developers.
Very cool. And you mentioned 2017. That's kind of the key date for Gitcoin's formation. I think I think you were around in the kind of ecosystem before then.
Yeah.
So if you could, having seen a lot, because 4 years is like an eternity for Ethereum.
Yeah.
I mean, it's before the first bull run. So if you can go back and say, what we should really focus on is this. What's that thing? Like right now we're dealing with kind of high transaction costs due to gas fees. We've got kind of a number of different issues that are trying to be solved with Ethereum 2.0. But what would you look back on and say, these are the problems that we really need to address before they occur?
Yeah. So like if I was in 2017, what would I focus on with like the benefit of perfect hindsight?
Yes.
I mean, I'm a DApp builder, and my specialty is taking amazing economic concepts like quadratic funding that Vitalik came up with and like putting a neon hipster interface on it. Like that's what I'm good at. And I'm an app developer, and so the problem with asking that question about 2017 is that it was all just building out infrastructure, and the cycle goes basically like fear and greed. Is like the financial market cycles, but like what we're building is infrastructure, and then hopefully dApps that leverage that infrastructure, which informs the next round of infrastructure. So it like spins together. And one of the things that I've been focused on since 2017 was like, let's not bother with building a token or like building a DAO when the infrastructure isn't even there yet. Let's just build something that people love and can use in their everyday lives. And I think that people are too dogmatic about decentralization too early. Like, just build something that has utility is what I would have told people to do back in 2017. How many ICOs never reached a single piece of utility for the end customer? I think the answer is a lot, and it delegitimized Ethereum for an entire market cycle. And hopefully people are rediscovering Ethereum and Balancer and synthetics and Maker and NFTs and DAOs and all that kind of stuff again. But it just seems like wasted potential to have all that capital go to projects that never delivered back in 2017. But that's with the gift of perfect hindsight. And it's impossible to have perfect hindsight. So, but I still continue to focus on dApps that actually have affinity from end customers and have provided utility to their audiences. Because I think that if you never get to that, then you're NGMI, you're not going to make it.
And so we've been talking about a lot about Ethereum, but to close off, you know, 4 years ago, Ethereum was kind of the main sort of rival to Bitcoin, as it were, and it was a new sort of thing. And now you've got a lot of different blockchain networks. Interoperability is a thing. So to finish off, where do you see Ethereum kind of in the next 5 years, and how do you see the overall its role in the overall blockchain ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that we're trying to figure out what the internet of value looks like right now. The internet of information changed the world because now computers could send information across a computer network. And now we've got the internet of value. Computers can send value across a computer network. And what's the best optimization of that? I don't know what the answer is, but I can explore the design space. And I think that one of the neat things about Ethereum is that it's basically taking decentralization very seriously. And I think that the beacon chain and ETH2 is going to be a significant step, but also layer 2 and rollups is going to be a significant step forward in making, like, what if we could make transactions cheap as air? That's just such an interesting design space. Instead of talking about how expensive transactions are on layer 1, what if we move to layer 2 and all of a sudden transactions cost a fraction of a penny? I don't know if you know this, but Gitcoin Grants integrated with ZK Sync, which is a layer 2 provider. And the user experience went from like $70 per transaction to like 5 cents per transaction. And we have a problem with transaction spam on Gitcoin because the transactions are so cheap. Like, that's the world that we're building for with the Ethereum space. And so I think that once people fully grok Ethereum's decentralization roadmap and start building for that, then we're going to be in a whole new world. And I'm really excited for that. And I think that Ethereum has a role to play, maybe not the only role to play. I'm not much of a maximalist. And I can't wait to see what other blockchains, what sort of niches of layer 1s evolve into the 2025 cycle.
Perfect. All right, Kevin, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. This was great.
All right.